All right, let's get some more perspective on the program. Ekemini Udim is a legal practitioner. He joins us from Uyori, Akwa Ibom State Capital, to bring us up to speed as to what we should understand, what is playing out. Mr. Udim, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
So, where we are, 240 members, we understand, have voted overwhelmingly. Those are the words used in support of the president's decision to declare a state of emergency. And you can see the Attorney General right there, the Chief Law Officer of Nigeria, defending the fact that a governor and his deputy and the House of Assembly can be suspended, something we don't find in the law. But it says the latitude, the discretionary power of the latitude that the president has in declaring a state of emergency allows him to put in abeyance. Those abeyance, in his words, perhaps means suspending the governor, his deputy, and the legislature. And then we've had an endorsement by the lower house. What do you make of this picture?
Well, with the greatest respect to the learned Attorney General of the Federation, there is no section of the Constitution that allows the suspension of the governor of a state. Yes, Section 305 of the Constitution allows the declaration of state of emergency by the president of the country against any part of the country that is troubled. But that same section of the Constitution or any other section of the entire Constitution, there is no provision that allows the president to suspend the governor of a state, suspend the deputy governor of the state, and also suspend the legislature. And that perhaps explains why the learned Attorney General never cited any particular section of the Constitution, that allows this suspension. Yes, the Attorney General did say that state of emergency means disruption of the usual, activities in a state of the federation. I agree with him. But that disruption has to be done in accordance with the Constitution. And therefore, where the Constitution does not expressly say you can suspend the governor, right? It will be reading into the Constitution or doing something outside the contemplation of the Constitution to suspend a democratically elected governor. Recall, if you read Section 305, you read it down, you see that that section also mandates the governor of a state to, contemplate the declaration of a state of emergency. And then the governor goes to the House of Assembly and then gets the 2/3 majority of the House of Assembly and then proceeds to the president of the country and requests the president to declare a state of emergency in a particular, state of the federation. Right. So that means that the Constitution intends that the governor should be part and parcel of what is going on in the state, whether there is state of emergency declared or whether there is no state of emergency declared. And therefore, for there not being any section of the Constitution that says, Mr. President, you have the power to declare state of emergency and also suspend the governor, suspend the deputy governor, and then suspend the House of Assembly. It is a very dangerous thing for Nigeria to witness right now, the suspension of a democratically elected governor and the House of Assembly as a result of the declaration of a state of emergency. I would have expected, with due respect to the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation, that, the government of the Federation of Nigeria should be properly guided, and should be guided in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. If we now want the president to have the power to suspend a governor, suspend a deputy governor, suspend the legislature, then what do we do as a country? We go to the National Assembly and seek amendment of the Constitution. And then we go to the Houses of Assembly of the State of the Federation and then get 2/3 majority authorizing the amendment to include that. But until we do that, then I'm afraid the suspension of the governor of Rivers State by the president in the declaration of state of emergency is something that is done completely outside the provisions of the Constitution. And this is not good for Nigeria as a nation that is practicing democracy and rule of law.
It's interesting to see that this same IGF was the one that took the states to court and insisted that only democratically elected government will be allowed to stand at that level, else they should forget about allocation of any federal funds or whatever. So I'm going to allow you to speak to that, but let's investigate further on what the decision has been. His premise is the fact that the dramatis personae here are those who should have even approached the president in the context of 305 to ask for a state of emergency, because the law in 305 says the governor, with a resolution from the assembly, can ask the president to come and declare that state of emergency. Now, their argument is that based on their intel and their understanding, what now happens, what is left to the federal government to do if the dramatis personae is now the governor and the state and the state assembly that are the one causing the trouble? What does the Constitution provide in that kind of scenario?
Well, if you read the text of the broadcast of the president declaring the state of emergency, you will see clearly that the reason for this state of emergency may not be unconnected with the disagreement between the serving governor, the governor of River State, and his political godfather. The text of that broadcast reveals more of that than revealing the conditions that have been stipulated in Section 305 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, because the drafters of the Constitution never allowed it to be that open-ended. They have stipulated conditions in the Constitution, Section 305, talking about Nigeria being in a state of war, talking about imminent invasion of Nigeria by foreign power. Maybe Niger wants to invade Nigeria, God forbid, and so the president rises to the occasion. So the conditions have been clearly stipulated. Now, if the conditions have been clearly stipulated, we have to also ask the question, the situation in River State, does it meet any of the conditions that have been stipulated in Section 305? Now, if the main reason for the issues that have gone on in River State is because of political disagreement, one would have expected, like in the Lagos State situation, where the House of Assembly in Lagos recently, was embroiled in some disagreements, the president stepped in. I'm sure the president was very neutral about what happened there, and because of that, they settled it amicably. One would have expected the same thing to happen in River State. Now, we ask the question again, was the situation in River State that bad that all the security agencies in Nigeria, could not be deployed to River State to maintain law and order, the bombing of the pipelines and all that? Are we saying that we could not have handled that as a country, as a sovereign nation, to handle whatever was going on in River State, like the destruction of the pipelines? We should have arrested that instead of going to declare state of emergency. And if for any compelling reason, state of emergency still needed to be declared, you declare it, but you do not suspend the governor. You do not also suspend the House of Assembly. Don't forget that this is a governor that still has immunity covering him by law, by virtue of Section 308 of the Constitution. So even if that the governor has committed any infraction, immunity still covers him. When you add up all this, it then would have called for a more some kind of circumspection on the part of the federal government instead of just declaring a state of emergency. Don't forget that recently the Supreme Court of Nigeria delivered judgment affecting River State. And while Nigerians were expecting implementation of the judgment, remember, the governor said he's ready to implement. He has even made attempts to, present the budget to the State House of Assembly. And that, for me, was the road to implementation of the decision of the Supreme Court. One would have expected that would be allowed to go through. Don't also forget that not long ago, I think 2 or 3 days ago, the State House of Assembly served impeachment notice on the governor. These are democratic steps that should have been allowed to go through without necessarily, declaring a state of emergency and then suspending the governor of the state. I have said that there is no section of the Constitution, and this is the opinion of majority of legal analysts in this country.
Okay.
Majority of the opinion of many people in this country, that the state of emergency that includes the suspension of a democratically elected governor, deputy governor, and the House of Assembly is totally outside the contemplation of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And once it is outside the Constitution, then there is need, to treat that situation with so much caution so as not to also breach the Constitution and go into the same allegation that the federal government is making against the governor of River State, talking about breaching the Constitution. There is need to balance this and ensure that the Constitution is at all times, protected from being, violated by anybody.
Mr. Kevin, I can report to you as I'm talking to you. I'm also following up on what's going on in the chambers. The House of Reps has actually made their decision. Now we're waiting for the Senate. It appears to me from what I'm seeing, they have not yet agreed. So I'm seeing feelers that they may have to go into an executive session. And some Nigerians are not having it. Everybody's watching them closely because they need 72 votes to be able to muster that decision for the president to have the validity of his action as possible. Let's say that, for instance, this was a presidential overreach based on information available to the president in his own wisdom. It was a presidential overreach. Would you say that the House of Representatives has now endorsed the legality and unconstitutionality? Because every lawyer, literally every person who is not on any side of this that I've spoken to, we've heard from, has said, look, you can declare a state of emergency, that's even a debate, but suspending democratic structure like the House of Assembly and that of the governor and deputy is total recklessness. So would you say they have endorsed illegality and unconstitutionality?
Well, until the House of Assembly has also specifically said that the suspension of the governor, the deputy governor, and the House of Assembly has been ratified by the House of Assembly, I take it to mean that they have not yet addressed that issue. What they have addressed is one part of the declaration, which is the declaration of the state of emergency by the president. They have a responsibility in law to also make a statement about the suspension of the governor, the deputy governor, and the House of Assembly. If they don't do that, then they have not satisfied satisfied the requirement of the law, which talks about them giving the approval. What are you approving? Is the Federal House of Representatives approving the suspension of the governor? Where is the legal backing for that? For now, they have not spoken about that. I have seen the excerpt of what they have spoken about, and they have also asked for some adjustment and so on. They have not made mention of the legality of the suspension of the governor, deputy governor, and state House of Assembly. And for that, I have the impression that they are still thinking about that. They are yet to make a statement on that because the law requires that they make a statement, on that. And this has to be done because we are talking about constitutional, adherence to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And everybody, lawmakers cannot encourage any breach of the Constitution. Rather, they should encourage the protection of the provisions of the Constitution. And therefore, Nigerians want to hear what is the position of the Federal House of Representatives regarding the suspension of the governor, deputy governor, and the House of Assembly. Until they say that, until they make a point clear, very clear to Nigerian citizens on that, then their action, about an hour ago or less than an hour ago is still incomplete. And the law requires that they should make it complete for the law and for the citizens of the country to see clearly where the House of Representatives, belong on this issue.
Okay, I'm literally multitasking, trying to get heads up as to what is playing out in the chambers. I can tell you that the Senate has actually gone into a closed-door session as we speak to deliberate further. And I think I noted your point about the exactitude in terms of that part that has to do with the suspension of the governor and the deputy, and as well as the members of the House of Assembly of Rivers State. I've also reached out to the people that are in that chamber to get me a clarity as to what was said concerning that. But let's also talk about some of the nuances of the AGF yesterday. When you listen to him, because some of us listen and we're trying to make legal sense. It was difficult to find, but you are the lawyer, you are the expert. Was this more of an economic decision, marked in political decision, and less of a legal decision?
Well, it appears so. It appears so. When you also read the full text of the president's declaration, you see a lot of that in the president's speech. And when listening to the learned Attorney General of the Federation yesterday, you could also see that he made mention of pipelines being broken by militants. He also made mention of the fact that the governor addressed militants and then encouraged them to break the pipelines. But the question I want to ask here is, the governor of Rivers State went for commissioning in a particular part of the state, and then he addressed the people there. With all due respect, is the learned Attorney General saying that all the persons that gathered there for the commissioning in Rivers State, the youth, the elderly, the commissioners, and even the governor himself, that all of them are militants? I think,
Mr. Kemini,
with the
just hold on.
greatest
So,
respect
without
to the
trying to
learned
defend
Attorney
him, just
General,
a moment. Just a moment, if you can hear me, without trying to, just to complete that phrase. So, when he said that, I said, I've forgotten the word. Is it teleguiding? When I remember the word, I'll say. So, he said the governor was speaking to militants and more like, let me use a street term, gingering them that he's going to lead from the front when the time comes. That means he's giving signal. So, let's say whether or not that's justiciable in court, because you can't say those boys are militant or not. He now said when the bombs or explosives happened, the governor did not make any condemnatory statement or anything just to show that, look, I'm not in support of what is going on in terms of destroying Nigeria's assets and infrastructure. So on that premise, is concluded that the governor is in complicity with whoever wants to destroy the pipeline. Is that how this is reasoned out in law for the premise of a declaration of a state of emergency? Because we have to investigate every step.
Yeah, I'm afraid no. Now, let's take that allegation to the court where the learned Attorney General practices at the highest level. If the learned Attorney General goes to the court to arraign Mr. Fubara and then says that, he did this the same way he said in the press conference yesterday, will Fubara be convicted by a court of law? Can a court of law use that clearly and say that Fubara is guilty as accused, as alleged? I don't think so. And I think that, a lot of people have called in the past for the separation of the Office of Attorney General from the Office of the Commissioner or Minister for Justice. I think it was for situations like this that the call became very loud so as to separate the politician from the technocrat, separate the politician from the man that is in the office and attending strictly to the issues of law. But our federal attorney general is a well-educated, well-experienced man. You give it to him on issues of law. We followed him over time before now. And Nigerians expect that the federal attorney general, with the greatest respect to him, should stand on the side of law at all times and interpret the law the way it should be interpreted. He shouldn't allow maybe the pressure from pressmen to make him say what he ordinarily, would not say, what ordinarily would not be ascribed, to the man that we know as the man of the law, as someone that has practiced law at the highest level in this country and has done so with distinction. Talking about what Fubara said at the commissioning and drawing the conclusion that the bombing of the pipelines, was encouraged by the governor of the state, I think it's a conclusion, taken too far, with the greatest respect to the federal attorney general. Okay. Now, it is also possible that the governor may have spoken with security agencies in the state. Don't forget that we have the military there in Rivers State. We have the Nigerian defense, civil defense. Their own is to protect pipelines and all that. So I think the conclusion that has been drawn, and if it was such conclusion that was drawn to declare state of emergency and suspend Governor Fubara, then that for me was quite unfortunate. And I think that in interpreting the law, there should be that fidelity to the law so as not to allow political coloration to infiltrate into the interpretation of provisions of and making of legal statements.
We must appreciate you so much, Ekemini Udim, legal practitioner, joining us from Uyo Akwa Ibom State. Thank you for your objective analysis. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you.